The year is 1798 in America, and Federalist Congress has just passed a series of laws known as the Alien and Sedition Acts. These acts were supposed to protect the United States, but instead were used by Federalists to stop the growth of the Democratic Republican Party. The Federalists used the acts for their own good. Most of the new people who came to the U.S. became Democratic Republicans, and by making the residency requirement longer, fewer immigrants would become citizens and vote against the Federalists. If the president could deport any alien from an enemy country or any alien who was considered dangerous, potential Democratic Republicans could never vote. With the Sedition Acts, criticizing the Federalist government was illegal and could get you into jail. The Federalists hoped that this would stop the Democratic Republicans from speaking out against the government, but the act did not really work. There was a lot of opposition from the Democratic Republicans, and they wrote about it in the media anyway. The acts backfired against the Federalists. John Adams did not support the acts and never used them. Only one alien was actually deported and 10 people convicted of sedition. All of the acts were repealed or expired by 1802, and they were a part of the reason that the Federalists were not elected again in the election of 1800. The people did not want more laws against their First Amendment rights.
VA and Kentucky Resolutions. The VA and Kentucky Resolutions was created as an opposition to the Alien Sedition Acts. The two popular Democratic leaders, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, loathed the whole idea of the Alien Sedition Act and saw it as a misuse power of the federal government and opposed it by appealing to the states. The resolutions were Madison that the Virginia legislature adopted, and Jefferson wrote the Kentucky Resolutions, and the state approved it, but this also introduced the principle of nullification. The states had a right to nullify an act of Congress that they deemed unconstitutional. Virginia and Kentucky viewed the Alien and Sedition Acts as unconstitutional violations of the First Amendment and citizens' rights. The appeal warned the states that the Alien and Sedition Acts was an imposement to the government of checks and balances guaranteed by the Constitution. The resolutions allowed Virginia and Kentucky to claim the right to declare null and void federal laws going beyond powers granted by the Constitution to the federal government. When the two states decided to declare nullification, other states were encouraged to do the same, but they did not follow. These resolutions were a big deal until it slowly dialed down by the time the next presidential election came around. Essentially, only two states allowed through with the resolutions. It showed that the balance of power between the states and federal government remained a controversial problem. The year is 1793 and all is well in America, but war is breaking out in the West. France and Great Britain are at war. The United States stays neutral. A year passes and Great Britain and America come to an agreement to sign the Jay Treaty. This treaty, which solved many long-standing issues between the United States and Great Britain, would later come to haunt America. The French, who are still at war with Great Britain, become outraged by this violation of alliance. The French then take it into their own hands to punish America by attacking innocent American merchant ships, 1,000 in total. George Washington sends Charles Pinckney, a U.S. minister, to France to help fix the problem. Unfortunately, this didn't work. It isn't until John Adams becomes president that this dispute begins to come to an end. John Adams sends the three-person delegate, which included Pinckney, John Marshall, and Elbridge Gerry. The three delegates travel to France to speak to the French Foreign Minister, Charles de Talleyrand. Charles de Talleyrand refuses to see the three delegates unless they pay a hefty bribe. When word reached America, Congress was outraged, wanting the names of the French agents, which would later be replaced with the letters XYZ, therefore coming to the name the XYZ Affair. Congress went even so far to call for defense measures. Creation of a navy and building of ships was authorized in 1789, and later that year undeclared war between France and America began. This undeclared war was known as the Quasi-War. The short feud ended in the Convention of 1800, which terminated the only formal treaty of alliance the United States had. It would be nearly a century and a half before the United States entered another formal alliance. The day is July 7, 1798. We have now started an undeclared war between France and America. This is the result of disagreements over treaties America's status as a neutral country during the French Revolution. Fought entirely at sea, the Quasi-War was largely a success for the fledgling U.S. Navy. During the entire conflict, the U.S. Navy only lost one warship to enemy action while capturing numerous French vessels, privateers, and warships. By late 1800, attitudes in France shifted, and hostilities were concluded by the Treaty of Montefiore. This treaty was signed on September 30th, 1800.
Today in history, the Judiciary Act of 1801 was approved by Congress. This act was made by John Adams to fill the judicial branch with Federalists. This act reduced the size of the Supreme Court from 6 justices to 5 and made 6 new circuit districts, which allowed there to be 16 new judges. This increased the power of the branch. The judges appointed were called midnight judges because it is said that John Adams was signing their appointments at midnight before Jefferson's inauguration. This act allowed the Federalists to take over the judicial branch.